Hey there guys. So this was a video I planned on making a few weeks ago after Callum Johnson had announced his retirement, but I didn't get around to it, so I'm making it now. I'm sure most of you heard that Callum Johnson has announced his retirement. When I first heard the news, it was actually quite a surprise because I'd heard about Callum Johnson. He was going to fight Igor McAlkin in July before that fight was cancelled, and then he was going to fight for the European title against I think a French guy. So it was a bit surprising when I heard he'd confirmed his announcement. He'd announced his retirement. But I just wanted to talk about his legacy and why I believe he's an underachiever. So Callum Johnson in 2010, he won the gold medal at the Commonwealth Games in the light heavyweight division. He represented Scotland because of his grandmother being from Glasgow, and he won gold. And obviously, when a guy is a good amateur in British boxing, then he's obviously going to have a lot of hype around him. And Callum Johnson, he climbed the ranks the sort of conventional way. He fought journeyman, and he upped his competition over time. He started fighting guys who, had at the start, prospects usually fight guys who have more losses than wins. But then over time, after getting more experience, they tend to fight guys who have won more than they've lost. So, and then he got a shot at the Commonwealth title against Wilberforce Shehepo. And he looked good in that fight. He stopped Shehepo in the 9th round, knocked him out. And it was impressive considering Shehepo had gone 12 rounds with Arthur Abraham. And a few years later he would go 8 rounds with Alexei Papien. So it obviously showed that Callum Johnson had legitimate power. And he was a threat to the light heavyweight division. From that fight he was inactive for a year and a half. And obviously inactivity plagued his career. There were long periods of time that he had out of the ring, and it obviously hurt his career in the end. But he came back about a year and a half later, and he fought Frank Buglioni, and he stopped Frank Buglioni in 1 round. He dropped him, and then he finished the job. And from there, he obviously had the fight that he's most well known for, the Artur Beterbiev fight. Obviously, he was dropped in the 1st round, and then he came back to drop Beterbiev in the 2nd round. He got stopped in the 4th round, but he showed a lot of heart in that fight, and he probably pushed Beterbiev more than anyone else has. He gave a good account of himself, and he proved that he could compete at world level. And that's probably what he's most well known for now, is dropping Artur Beterbiev. And from there he fought Shawnee Monaghan in New York. I think that was on the Joe Smith Dimitri Bivol undercard, and he stopped him in the 3rd round. But from then on he was out of the ring for 2 years again. The COVID situation probably didn't help, with everyone being inactive, but he came back against Emil Markic in April 2021, and he got stoppage in the 2nd round, but he didn't look particularly good in that fight. In the 1st round, it was like he just wanted to get that fight over and done with as quickly as possible. And then he got dropped in the 1st round, but it wasn't counted as a knockdown when it should have been. So, but then he got the stoppage in the 2nd round, and then he went on to fight Server Emelayev, and he beat him with a controversial 10-round decision. In another fight he didn't look good in. But obviously Emelayev, he was quite an awkward guy to pin down. So. It was inevitable that Callum Johnson would probably struggle with him because he was obviously a guy who likes to get his power shots off, and it's hard to do against a guy who is quite slick and tricky to hit. And then on, he obviously had the Joe Smith fight, and that got cancelled due to COVID or whatever, some nonsense test. And that was probably going to be one of the fights of the year, because both guys obviously very heavy-handed. Both guys come to fight, and it's a shame that fight didn't happen in retrospect, because maybe like you saw what happened to Joe Smith against Beterbiev. When he was trading with Beterbiev, he was getting completely destroyed. Obviously, he got knocked down numerous times in that fight, and he got stopped in the second round. So maybe Callum Johnson could have done something in that fight, because he had a similar level of power to Beterbiev, and he was technically good himself. So maybe he could have stopped Joe Smith. I always saw that fight as quite 50-50 sort of thing. So I thought he would have had a good chance, but obviously the fight was cancelled in the end due to something with COVID. Callum Johnson was going to make a return to the ring against the guy Marcus Brown fought, Kalajdzic, but that fight was cancelled. And then the Igor Mikhalkin fight got cancelled. So I think in retrospect, I think everyone should have seen the retirement coming, because Callum Johnson had 3 fights cancelled in 2022, sorry, and the first one wasn't his fault, but the other 2 probably were, and he said he was going through mental health problems and stuff like that. So I think everyone probably should have saw the retirement coming in retrospect. So I believe Callum Johnson was an underachiever. I think he should have won a world title, in my opinion. I think he was good enough, and if he would have been more active, because this is a guy who only had 21 professional fights, you know. I don't know how many years, but it was probably at least a decade. So I think it's quite disappointing that Callum Johnson has retired, because I was always a fan of the guy, and I would have liked to see him win a world title, but he still had a good career. Obviously, he was the British and the Commonwealth champion, and he'd always been. He gave Beterbiev a good fight. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and God bless.